My name is Kim. I am one of the training and onboarding specialists here at Map My Customers. Just a little bit about what that means. I am part of the customer success team, and our goal on customer success is to make you successful with our tool. Part of that starts with the onboarding process, which is really just making sure that we are aligned with what goals you have, trying to get out of the Map My Customers tool, making sure you can successfully get your data in. So we did have a session on imports and integration. So how can I move my data from either a spreadsheet or another CRM that I'm using into the Map My Customers tool? We will be there the entire length of that, making sure the data is set up, the account is set up in a way that's going to work for you and your team, but also empowering you to make any changes in the future. If goals or anything change throughout the process, you're now trying to capture a new piece of information, whatever it might be, we can definitely work with you to get that set up, even if it's after your initial onboarding. The last stage of onboarding, well, I guess the third stage really is going to be training. It's going to be making sure that your team, as well as yourself as a manager or an administrator, knows how to use the tool. The team is the one who is pumping data in. Our end users are the one that are really filling up the pipeline, logging those activities. And then management needs to be able to understand and read what is going into that tool. The last step is ongoing customer success, and that's where exports kind of play into. Is a little bit of managerial training. Team members can also export their own data, and also making sure that using Map My Customers, you're able to get the information back out of the system that you might need to funnel further up the pipeline, send to your immediate manager, or really just use on your own. So today we're really going to talk about exporting, which is the inverse of importing, and talk about getting data out of the system. So I will go ahead and dive right in as there are no questions. Like Mary said, feel free to raise your hand or throw things in the Q&A. And Mary will stop me if I go, too far down the rabbit hole and don't notice it. The exports portion is something that is specific to the web version. So it's not something you can do on your mobile app, but everyone has access to run these exports. So if I'm an individual contributor, I'm an individual team member, and I say, you know what, I just want a daily list of the activities I've logged. Maybe my manager doesn't even use Map My Customers, and I want to send that out to them. I can also run this as a manager or an administrator for an entire team. The different exports that you can run are based on the objects we have in Map My Customers. Exports live in the reports section, which again is specific to the web version. And when I come into reports, all the way at the bottom right, there's a section called exports. What an export essentially is doing is letting you pull data into a spreadsheet. So Excel, Google Sheets, any other formulas or work you want to do on the exports after they've been pulled out, you would be able to do because this is going to go as a CSV file right into your inbox. Today, we're going to look at two different types of exports, but there are actually four different types of exports that you can pull. When you're ready to start running an export, there is a blue Create Export button on this page. And the four different types of exports I might run are company, people, deals, or activities. These correlate with the four objects that live in Map My Customers. An example of a company's export might be I'm looking for a list of accounts that are near a certain area. We're going to run through a full example of a company's and of an activities export, so I'm not going to get too far into that just yet. A people export is going to be your contacts, your individual people that are living in Map My Customers. Maybe you are going to be sending out an email or want to use this as a call list, and you can pull out all of the contacts that you have in the system, Christopher and John Doe and John Bale, and pull those out into an Excel spreadsheet. The deals are going to be your opportunities. You're going to be able to pull out anything that's in your deal funnels. So if you need an Excel file of all of the deals that were closed in a certain time frame, or all of the deals that are still open, or all of the deals owned by a certain team member, you're able to pull those out of the Map My Customer system. Again, if you're not using all of the objects, that is totally fine. If you're not using deals just yet, you don't need to pull deals out of the system. It is just an option if you are using that object. The last one and probably most common example and most common export you're going to be running is your activities export. These are the day-to-day interactions. So whether you want to run a daily or weekly report, you can automate this or you can run it a la carte to get those activities out of the Map My Customer system. And like I mentioned, either run pivot tables in Excel, send them to somebody who is not in Map My Customers, and really just get a good aggregate understanding of what's going on in your Map My Customers system. I'm going to go ahead and run two examples, and we're going to start with running a company's export. And we're going to focus in on an example that is something we've seen other Map My Customers teams actually do, which is pulling a list of accounts for either marketing purposes or just for a trip that you might be planning. It's very common that someone on the marketing team says, hey, we're doing an in-person event in Raleigh or in New York this week. And you say, okay, well, we should probably invite those people. If you are looking to invite those people, you might want to pull a list of a reasonable group to invite to this event. So if I'm holding an in-person event in Manhattan and I say, all right, we've got 1,500 accounts in Map My Customers. But some of these are in California and some of these are in Ohio or North Dakota. Those likely aren't people that I want to invite to my in-person New York event. If you're looking for a list of companies that are in your top prospect group, you're looking for a list of companies that are over Cadence. The company's export is a place where you're going to pull out an Excel file, a spreadsheet of those companies. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to say this is my New York invitee event list. Yeah. Just giving it a name does not do anything. Even though I said New York in the name, as I scroll through, I will still see things in Miami or Missouri because all I've done is simply label this data. The two major steps that you're going to take when building an export are selecting your columns and applying filters. The columns are accessible here from this little booklet to the left of the Save Export button. And this is going to show you all of the columns that live on the selected object. So I am looking at companies. So I am going to see company-related information, the account type, account versus lead. These are specific to my Map My Customers instance. This would be representative of your Map My Customers custom fields or data when you open up this columns list. You'll notice I won't see things like deal amount or person's title because I am doing a company's export. And so I'm going to see the list of fields related to my companies. When I go through and start selecting things like year-to-date sales or other information that might be relevant here, I'll notice in the preview at the bottom, when I scroll left to right, those are going to start adding as columns in my spreadsheet, as columns in my preview. This is essentially choosing the header of your Excel spreadsheet. Once you've selected the columns or deselected any ones that you do not want, you can filter this down to find the relevant information. I'm going to say I want anything in a certain mile radius of New York City because this is an event that's happening in person. Again, right now I am seeing the full data list by default because I'm not filtering any information out. But if I come into my filters, I can filter by any of the criteria. Again, if I want to come in and filter by account type is hold, or account versus leads are leads. Any of the fields that you saw in your column selection, or any of your fields that live on your Map My Customers, show me everyone in a certain industry or everyone that was created in 2023. Any of these fields are elements that you can filter by. So if I come in here and say, I want to filter by the location, I want to invite people that are, I don't know, 5 miles around Manhattan, that might bleed into New Jersey or into Long Island. So I don't want to filter by something like state is New York or city is Brooklyn, because that's going to be limiting to what I'm getting. The location filter lets me focus in on a specific area. It's going to zoom me in and say, okay, here's your 5 mile radius around your current location. It's drawing that circle. I can make this smaller or larger, but I can see it's captured a circle around the location that I've selected. This has now reduced this list from 1,500 to the 180 or that are within this area. And maybe for me, that makes sense. It's 5 miles around the New York area. That's probably as far as people are going to travel to the event that I'm inviting them to. Once I've built the list I want with the columns I need, I can go ahead and save this export. This export will live in Map My Customers forever, and it will be dynamic. Meaning, if today I go in and open up a new account that falls within that 5 mile radius around New York, this list will automatically update. I would now see 186 rows instead of 185. So you do not need to go in and rebuild the same exports. They are going to automatically update for you. In order to get this out of Map My Customers, I will use the Actions button on the right side of the export that I would like to download. And here I can come in and elect to quick send this export or schedule send it to myself. In this example, I've created an invite list that I'm going to use once. So I could choose the quick send option. And what that's going to do is download this report and send it to your email right away. It's just going to show up in your inbox. And I'd say it typically takes about 30 seconds. The only exception here is if you are running an export with greater than, and Justin, correct me if I'm wrong, it's greater than 100,000 rows, is going to need to run overnight. So if you are somebody who has a very large data set in your account, or you've been using Map My Customers for years and years and have a lot of activities in there, that is just going to run overnight for you. I'm going to pause here so people maybe digest. I don't see any hands raised or any questions, but want to give people just a second to kind of gather and see if there are any questions on that. Before I move into the second example that we'll look at, which is running an activity export. So I'll pause, take a little drink, and keep moving in then. Again, exports can be created for all 4 objects. What you're looking to get out of the system is going to change and impact how you're filtering out the records or how you're adding the columns, or really at the beginning, what type of export you're looking to build. A very common and probably most common use case for the exports is running a daily or weekly activity export. If I come in here to start building out a new export, I click this blue Create Export option, and I say, okay, I want a list of all of the activities that Harry Potter logs every single week. In that, I would first say, what do I want? What is the object I'm looking for? And if I said, I want to see all of the interactions Harry is doing, that is activities. So right at the top, I will select, I want an activities export. I'm going to give it a name. Maybe this is Harry's weekly activity. You can also add a description. So if there is just a little bit more information that you like to add in there, you can add that in. Maybe it's the date or the time or whatever it might be. But we've just got 2 spots to fill out information about the export you're building. You'll notice again, I named this Harry's weekly activities. So I might say, okay, well, why am I seeing Albus's activities? I just want Harry's. Again, I need to apply filters to tell the system what data I want in this export. I always like to add my columns first. It's really just preference. But if I come in here and select on the columns, again, now I am seeing a list of the fields relevant to the activities. I am no longer seeing account type, activity versus lead, industry. These fields are relative to the activities. So I can see things though, like check-in distance, or whether or not this was a verified activity, or any other piece of activity information, the notes, custom fields, meeting outcomes, anything else that I want to have in this export as a column. One thing to note is you can have either the assignee or the creator. A lot of times when running these exports, people say, well, what's the difference? The creator of an activity is the person who makes it. If I go in and hit the add activity button or hit the check-in button, I am the creator. If I create that and do not assign it to someone else, I'm also the assignee. But if I'm a manager and I go in and create the activity and say, hey, Justin, I really need you to follow up with this account, I'm the creator, but I can assign that to Justin. It becomes a matter of how you use the tool and how you operate, of whether or not you want to include the assignee, the creator, or both. And it's just, again, a matter of, are your team members just logging activities for themselves, or are they assigning data to other team members? I'm going to go ahead and add the assignee. I want just the end user, the person who executed the activity every time, in case I have some people assigning to other users. The other elements to look at in the activities reports here are things like the check-in distance delta. The check-in distance is going to help you understand, was this an activity that was just added on the web version or through the activity button, or was this flagged as a check-in? The difference between a check-in and just adding an activity is going to be the check-in is used when you are physically in person using specifically the Map My Customers mobile app. We encourage users to use the check-in when they're out in the field because it autofills information for them and also helps us capture that distance delta of, hey, were you really close to that account when you logged that activity? If you are looking at the check-in distance deltas here, you'll notice sometimes it is blank and sometimes it is filled. A blank check-in distance delta lets you know that they did not use the check-in functionality. A filled check-in distance delta lets you know they did use the check-in button. You also have the element of verification. If something is true, you know that they were within the defined distance. That if something is a verified check-in, they were within the limit of how far we should be checking into accounts. If it is false, it was outside of that range. And if the verification is blank, they did not use the check-in button. This is all information that the exports can help you pull by adding specific columns that are capturing this information. Again, once you've added the columns that you want, this example specifically, I said, is supposed to be Harry's activities. So I want to ensure I go in and use those filters to focus on the records that are important to me. So maybe I want everything where the assignee is Harry Potter. Now I am just seeing the activities that Harry logged. So here I can see he is the assignee. I can see information about the check-in, the distance, whether or not this was verified or not. And once I'm satisfied with the report that I've built, again, I will just hit this blue Save Export option for myself. If you're building an export that is not just a one-time list you're trying to pull, this one here is Harry's weekly activities. Every week, as Harry's manager, I want to see what he's been doing. In the actions section on the right side, again, same options here. Quick Send will send you right away the full export list. You also have the option to schedule send. What this schedule send functionality is going to do is let you choose a frequency at which you would like to receive this export. So if I know I want to start receiving this export every Friday at 8 p.m. or every Monday morning at 5 a.m. Whenever you really like to review your exports, if you do this Friday, maybe it waits in your inbox over the weekend, and Monday morning you can pull it up. But you can select a date and time. So if I want this on Fridays, I'll start it on a Friday. The frequency, daily, weekly, monthly, the time zone at which that should send, and who should receive this export. Even if there is somebody who does not have an MMC license that you would like to send this to, you can add them in as a recipient. Something else I've seen people do often is also assign it or send it to the user themselves. If you send this to Harry and I am Albus, the manager, every single Friday I can say, all right, you did 30 activities this week or 10 activities this week. And Harry can't say, no, what are you talking about? I did 15. I can say, no, you and I both at Friday at 8 p.m. got the exact same spreadsheet in our inbox. So you can stay very aligned with your reps and making sure you know and they know exactly what you're seeing from a reporting perspective. When you schedule out this export, again, I scheduled this to run Friday at 8 p.m. The first time this runs, it is going to pull historic data, meaning that entire data set is going to send to me this Friday. The following Friday, it's going to give net new information. That is the same for activities, for companies, for deals. It is going to give you net new information, meaning if the report runs this Friday at 8 p.m., next Friday at 8 p.m., I'm going to get a report of only the activities logged from this Friday to next Friday. So I will have a week's worth of activities. I don't need to sift through what Harry did in 2022 or what he did even a month ago. I'm just looking at the week that is most relevant. It's the most recent week that occurred. Again, I can do this as a weekly or daily report. So whatever you choose to schedule, it's going to give you net new. So if there were any updates or anything added new, you would see that in the following report. I know that's a lot of information to kind of digest. And the one thing with the reports and the exports specifically is that they're very exciting because you can get a lot of information. You can really configure these how you need them. But at the same time, having a lot of customization makes it get a little bit complex. So I really do like to break it down and say it's 3 major steps. It's what type of export, companies, people, deals, or activities. What columns do you need to see in that Excel spreadsheet header? And what filters, what specific data are you looking for in here? So if you would like to see anything in a certain location by a certain industry, all of those are filters that you can use to focus in on what is relevant to pull out. Sometimes people say, you know what, I'm just more comfortable in Excel. You can always pull it out and use Excel as well to sort and filter in any way that you might need. But you can also do all of that filtering right here in the Map My Customers export. Questions? I see there's nothing there, but again, just give some people some space to think and see if they've got any questions on that.
A few things I'll add, if that's all
Yeah.
right. So with the exports here, obviously once you get the data into Excel, there's a lot of cool things that you can do with this. You could calculate things like what percentage of data is, what percentage of activities are check-ins, what percentage are verified. The spreadsheet itself, in terms of what you're getting out of MMC, is just going to be a list, but there are tools to be able to do that. So if you're personally know how to do that, that's great. If you're not comfortable and you're wondering, hey, how could I take this information and use it to create a table or a chart that says what percent of my activities are check-ins and then how many are verified, contact our support team or your customer success manager. Would be happy to help with that. The other thing too is in terms of combining data. So with the exports here, they're just singular lists. So you can have a list of companies and then a list of activities, but maybe you want to see how many activities are logged against certain types of companies. Maybe you segment your companies in revenue A tier, B tier, C tier, and that's something that lives on your company. That's something we could help you do as well. There's tools to be able to join two data points together there. So a lot you can do there. Obviously, it requires some knowledge. If that's not something you're comfortable with, please reach out. And those are things we'd be happy to help show you and give information on how you can get even further, deeper insights on some of this reporting.
Yeah, no, awesome. Thanks, Justin. The other thing I do always like to highlight at this point, especially in trainings, people often watch that and go, easy enough. I can do that. And maybe you can, and that's awesome if you can. But a lot of times people go, okay, easy enough. Get in, try to do it themselves and say, okay, what did she click to do that? We have our knowledge base available, which does break this down into step-by-step instructions. You can see we have knowledge base articles on all of the different topics, but there is one specifically on exporting that will give you a short video, or it will really just clearly walk you through and say, all right, click create export. Click on our little book, pick your columns, apply your filters. So this will step you through if you are saying, if you're feeling overwhelmed or if you feel like you're good to go, but then get a little bit stuck. All of our knowledge base articles and videos are going to break this down step by step for you. So you do not need to remember every word I say to be successful at getting